And now it's all yours, Scott.
Okay, well, as was mentioned before, I'm the current president of the Black Heritage Museum. You mentioned Craig. Craig was the prior one, past one. Also, there was Talmadge Williams, who was way before me, and Craig's mother, Evelyn Syfax, was the founder. And I had a hard time trying to figure out why she wanted to start this because she was already the president of the Arlington Historical Society, and so I had a hard time figuring out what was her reasoning for this. And Over the years, I think I found out because where they do tell some of these stories, they can't tell it the way we can tell it. Mainly because some of us are blessed enough to be still here and able to tell it first person. I won't tell my exact age, but I'm way over 60. And I a lot of things that we talk about in the museum, I do remember a lot of those things, and I've seen them firsthand. Um, the museum actually started in 1995. So we're going on a long time now, almost 30 years. We started out as a virtual, and I came on board about, I think, either 2016 or 17. I can't remember. Then I think the leader was Camilla Ham, whose mom you may know is Dorothy Ham, who was a civil rights leader here in Arlington. And there's a school named after her. And then she had to bow out. This is not easy work. There is no pay. And it requires a lot of you. This is like a 24/7 job. But I would say, fortunately and unfortunately for me, it's like I can't explain it. It's like something's been put on me by I don't know, just by God or whatever. I live and breathe this now. So I've learned to have sort of the drive. I do get tired, but this is all day. This is every day. And a lot of people just don't have the window of time to, you know, do all the work that's involved. But for some reason, I have gotten this big passion for this history and for all history, really. Even as a kid, I was a weirdo because a lot of times my cousins would be out playing and I would be inside asking my grandparents and my aunts and uncles all kinds of questions. I was always interested in them. You know, I was interested in where my grandmother came from and who was her mom, and I was interested in my parents as a kid. I wanted to know, you know, I'm saying this is how stupid, how crazy I was. I'm just saying how my parents fell in love. Where did you meet? What songs were playing? And I know all of that. And I'm glad I did. And my family, they are glad I did too, because I guess I'm sort of a family historian. So they called me for questions because, you know, they were out playing and I was sort of learning about our family. But so when I came on board, we were still virtual, and we were at the SunTrust building on Columbia Pike, which has now been demolished. They sent us a letter saying you got 30 days to get out of here. And I was very, very upset because they were so good to us for those 10 years that we were there. And we were told that we would have to leave. They're going to knock it down, build housing on the parking lot. We had a huge parking lot, and they were going to build a library there, and it would take 2 years. Well, it's been 5 years and still nothing there. So that's what I learned about a county also, is that when they say 2 years, they mean 10, really, absolutely. So we could have been there all that time, but we ended up moving down the street at 2611. We developed a partnership with Columbia Pike Partnership, and we were there for 2 years, and then Amazon decided they were going to take that space. So we moved back up the street, and we're in the building owned by Dr. Teflon, who is head of the EDCD, which is Ethiopian Development uh, Organization, and the whole building really is dedicated to education. These people, I guess, they come from Ethiopia, whatever, and he is like the king. We have a lot of Ethiopian residents now, and he's getting these people green cards, and they're working. They're taking classes there, and the whole thing. So we're happy to be in that building. But unfortunately, Columbia Pike decided they want to move out because they can actually work virtual. So I'm going to try to hang in there at least till next year, and the rent's going to be much higher. But we've got some things planned, so I don't want to knock everything down right now. But it's a struggle with this, mainly because we are not supported by the government, local or national. I have to get out every month and and become the like a vacuum cleaner salesman or whatever, and knock on doors, call people for donations. And people have been very, very good to us as far as that is concerned. So we're hanging in there. So like I said, we were virtual, and when Craig, well, first Camilla could no longer do the work. She had some health problems. Then Craig had some deaths in his family and some sick people, and he couldn't. So it was just something just dropped in my hand, and I couldn't say no. And the first thing I did was I said, well, look, let's have some artifacts in here. And they were like, well, we don't have a place, so we can do it right here. And so we decided to fix the place up, and I started collecting things. And you see in my house, I I just collect. There's nothing in here but books and memorabilia. That's how I live. That's me. I'm crazy. And but now we have a nice collection there, I think, and we're still collecting more things. Sadly, we know that Arlington has knocked down so many things, but thank God, every blue moon we come across some photos and things like that. One wonderful thing I found last year was where we are at 3045B Columbia Pike. We're actually on the same ground that was Camp Casey, which was an all-black Civil War camp there. I'm working now to get a marker put there because we have evidence that it actually was there. And someone in the neighborhood was building a pool or something in their backyard, and they came across a kettle, which came from the Civil War days. So there's probably more artifacts down there. I'm asking the county to be careful because they're getting ready to renovate the Career Center, which was also, part of Fort Casey. And so hopefully look for some artifacts there. I'm hoping that they'll be able to find some things. So let's see. Arlington's African-American history. Although the first Blacks were here in 1619, we know that they were up here at earlier at that time also. But I always say that our history here really started we'll start at Mount Vernon first, and then we will say the Arlington House. We know that, let's see if I can pull this down a little bit. Here we go. So I'm going to go all the way down. Okay, so we're going to start here. Let's see if I can keep technology. Anybody can get this down a little more? It's coming. Okay, that's good right there. Okay, so this is George Washington. And actually, that's where we really started uh, at Mount Vernon. And oh, by the way, if you guys get a chance, you need to go to Mount Vernon. I mean, what they're doing there, oh my gosh, it is just fascinating. I got a private tour last year, and I mean, they were just archaeologists all over the place. They're unfolding so much new energy. I mean, information, and because the last time I was there before, last year was in 1968, and we went on a school trip there, and the enslaved people were all white people, all white ladies in pretty dainty little aprons and things, but they're actually telling the whole story. They're uncovering the bodies, names where these people are buried. Uh, George Washington is buried in that same cemetery, and the information that they're uncovering there is it's really fascinating. If you get a chance to go there, you would put your sneakers on because there's a lot of walking and a lot of land. But George Washington was married to Martha, who was married to Augustus, and we know that George was her second husband. He had acquired slaves at the age of, I think, 14 or 15 or something from his dad. So on Mount Vernon, they had two sets of slaves. They were the Washington slaves, and then there were slaves that were owned by the Custis, which those slaves he was in charge of, but he could not free them. That was the only thing that he could not do. He had put in his will that upon his death that his enslaved people would be freed. Hers, of course, upon her death, had to go, within the family. George Washington and slavery really is difficult. It really needs to be explored a little deeper. He did own enslaved people, but he was against it. He was the first politician to, outright say it's wrong, although he had them. So that's what I say, it's always difficult. He was considered, I guess, a fair slave owner. And we have to, and I hate to talk like that because I don't want to glorify slavery at all. We're not doing that, but we have to also consider the fact that it was legal. But his slaves were allowed to be married. They were off on Saturday and Sunday. And Saturday, what they would do is they would go into Alexandria and sell their own goods. They, in their quarters, they had their own gardens, and they were allowed to go to Alexandria City and sell their goods. Of course, George still, how do you say, he still got from them because he had stores on his property. So the money that they made, whether they bought clothes or whatever, they would buy from his stores. So he would still benefit. He was a very money frugal, sort of like a cheap person. I mean, every dime, every nickel, he he knew where it was and where it was going. And this picture you see here, if you can see it, they're out there working. Of course, this is sort of staged. This picture was taken for a newspaper, and I think the paper was trying to say that he was too lenient on his servants. So you see somebody, doing hair or whatever, but these people worked hard. They worked sun up to sundown. And believe it or not, a lot of times he was out there with them. Now, he wasn't working, but he was making sure that everybody was working, even the ones that were paid, who were white, they had to work. He was, like I say, he was very frugal. And that's probably how I think how he got pneumonia and died. He was out there in the rain, making sure people were working, and he caught pneumonia or whatever. And we know that story. But let's see if I have another picture here. Hopefully, no, no, I don't have that one on this one. But his grandson, uh, George Washington Parke Custis, took the slaves that he got after his mom passed and took them to the Arlington house. And this is where really I feel like the African American history really began in Arlington. These people came there up on their first day. They began to work. They built their quarters, which some of those quarters are still there at the Arlington house. You have to go there too, because they're unveiling a lot of new information that wasn't there, 10, 15 years ago. They're unveiling a lot of new information about the people. And also the museum, we've partnered with the Arlington Historical Society and a guy named Tim Aiken and a lady named Jessica Kaplan. I don't know if you know Jessica, but we're creating stumbling blocks, and these stones, we're unveiling names of enslaved people that worked in Arlington, and we're putting their names on these stones and have them all over Arlington. And they will be where these people actually work. So we're gonna have a bunch of them at the Arlington house. So these people began to build the Arlington house with their hands. George Washington Parke Custis was land rich, but he really didn't have a lot of money. So they had to just use whatever they could to build this Arlington house. And if you ever seen the Arlington house, it's gorgeous. The columns, and I was very, very upset when they took the Arlington house off of the Arlington emblem. You know, that emblem that we have, and I don't know. I mean, sometimes people, I don't know, get a little too personal. I don't know with the sensitive. I don't know. I'm not very sensitive. But it was said that it represented slavery. Well, slavery is a part of American history. It is. But what I love about this Arlington house is that these enslaved people that built it, uh, you know, were almost like geniuses. No regular Joe Blow could build that. These people wrote did the blueprints, did the planning, and the building. Because every time most of us think of enslaved people as people, out in the fields picking cotton or whatever. No, there were all types. These enslaved people could read blueprints and write them. They also designed and built Mount Vernon. That the architecture you see was designed by these African American people, and also a lot of the building and structure in Washington D.C. George Washington was there, and I'm telling you, these people would actually have these arguments with George Washington, telling me, "No, you're not doing it right. Or you're not that." This is how resilient these people were, and so when I see that when I see that house, I'm looking at, I'm like, wow, this is the Arlington house and was built by these people, and it should be told and shown. So that's my feeling on that. As you see, little of the pictures, there is Selena Gray and one of her kids, maybe two of her kids. Selena Gray was she was an enslaved person, but she was also an assistant. She was basically an assistant to Mary Custis Lee, who was George Washington Parke Custis' daughter. She ran the place basically. And of course, when the Union came through and ran the Lees out, she stayed and she made sure that, you know, the furniture and the artifacts that we see there now, she made sure that nobody was going to touch that. She had the key to the place. So she was a very, very vital part of that Arlington house. That needs to be talked about more. But thank God for sessions like this. You know, we can learn about these things that we probably didn't learn in school and should have. Also, there is the grave digger there, and he is the one that dug all those early graves there during the when they first started the cemetery, and he also took a hand in building Freeman's Village, and we'll talk about that. But Arlington House also had is where Trinity Church comes out of. Also, Trinity is on Columbia Pike, and that is the very first integrated church in Arlington, and it was integrated back during this time because the Lees were, especially Mary, they were very Christian religious people, and so the church started there, and everybody had to go. I don't care who you were, you're black, white, whatever. If you're around there, you had to go to this church, and so the church, and that church still remains very integrated today. But it came out of Arlington House. And let's move down a little bit. Okay, so Arlington can be proud that we're the first to do a whole lot of things. And one of the things that happened here was the enslaved people were free about almost a year before the proclamation was signed. So a lot of enslaved people escaped up here for freedom. One of the stipulations was that you had to join the Union Army, and so they were, and you know, if you join, they would take care of you. And one of the ways they took care of these people was to set up these contraband camps. And there was a contraband camp, McLean, was one near Marymount College. There was one in Falls Church, I believe. Then they built the Freeman's Village, which Freeman's Village is probably the most famous contraband camp in America or whatever. And that was built in Washington, D.C. People were escaping up here like crazy. They were escaping to their freedom, and they wanted to learn how to live the American dream. The camp here in DC got so crowded that something had to be done about it. People were even sleeping on streets. And there was a lot of disease. So the government decided to build a bigger one. And they said, well, we'll take it to Arlington, because Arlington is nothing but, you know, rolling woods and those type of things anyway. They also said we build it on this, because they just ran the Lees out. We'll put it on that property. That's a slap in the face to General Lee, who, you know, who was, help me, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm having a senior moment. He wasn't a Union. He was
Confederate.
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 Yeah, I get Confederate and MAGA mixed up sometimes. Sorry, my mind. Yeah, so they figured that here we go. This is a slap in the face to him, and so they got the land actually from Mariah Syphax. Mariah had was part of the Syphax family who lived on Arlington House, but the Syphaxes were legally, I guess, they were enslaved people, but they didn't live like that. They were free to do what they wanted to do. They could come in and go, and And that was basically because Mariah was George Washington's Park Custis' daughter. He had a relationship with an enslaved person. So um, her husband did work inside the house, William, and he was referred by George Washington. He said, get him in there because he's really good at what he does, which was really rare because this man was my complexion. And usually the enslaved people that worked on the inside were light people, basically because they were probably relatives. see how we all connected? We don't even realize it. But he got to work inside, and he was also like a supervisor to all the enslaved people or whatever. But anyway, Mariah had this land, and so they decided to use that land. They had a contract set up for 2 years, and she was to get this type of money. And Freeman's Village ended up being 33 years. And these people would come there, they would learn how to read, how to write, they would learn a trade. It was a place where you had to be very serious. There was no hanging around. There was security and those types of things there. And they had the greatest teachers that came there. I mean, these teachers were come from all over. The most famous teachers they had was Sojourner Truth, who is a Black history icon. Ain't I a woman, the whole thing. She lived here in Arlington for 2 years. She wrote a letter she had heard about Freeman's Village. She wrote a letter to President Lincoln and asked him, could she go there and teach? And he allowed it, and she got a stipend for it. And she would teach these people pride and how to stand up and how to act like a free person. During that time, the lingo was be a great credit to your race, and that was what that was all about, And Frederick Douglass would come with these speeches, and because he basically was part of probably more than 50-60% of the proclamation having President Lincoln sign it, because he was right there with Lincoln and pushing him, and he would come there. By the end of the century, Freeman's Village was not a safe place anymore. The people who had set it up, a lot of the government officials that had set it up, they had passed on. I'm talking about 30 years. And this new generation of people were coming in here, and they didn't like what was going on. One of the things they didn't like was these people were resilient, meaning they were serious and they worked hard, they studied hard. They got government jobs. One of the side factors became a delegate. I mean, this is during Reconstruction, became a delegate here. We were Alexandria County, I think, then. And so he was probably the first. A lot of white people in Arlington fell on hard times during the Civil War, and many had to move. And so they had to sell their property fast. So they sold it cheap. And these Black people that came off of Freeman's Village were buying this property all around Arlington like crazy. Arlington, I'd say in the end of the 19th century, Arlington was probably 75-80% Black. It was just a Black town. A lot of the land was like a swamp land, whatever, but these people, they nurtured the land. And this didn't sit too well with a lot of these new people that were coming through. They were developers. They were looking at developing Roslyn, which Blacks and whites lived very well together in Roslyn. I mean, there was a lot going on down there, but they got along well. And so that's when Harriet Tubman would come up, and she would teach. I mean, she was a little short, probably 4 foot something woman, but she was teaching them how to defend themselves, even the men, because there was a lot going on. People didn't like what was going on with this whole thing, and they felt something had to be done about it. So what they did was they stopped Freeman's Village, and William Syphax, who was the delegate I was telling you about, the son, he got their money back because you had to pay taxes to live there in Freeman's Village, and he got their tax money back. Some people got some type of stipend and were able to move out, and a lot of people moved to what we now have is, which were the major Black neighborhoods. Basically, it was Green Valley, which now Arlington View, which was called Johnston Hill then, and they moved to those areas. But Jim Crow was rough. Jim Crow was rough on Black people, and a lot of people lost their homes and land. Even some white people had hard times because, just to go to the parks, you had to prove that you were 100% white. Some people had to carry a little piece of paper to prove who they were. I mean, there was a lot going on during that time. And I would say by 1920, it went all the way down to probably 13% Black. And we began to see Confederate when I say monuments, I mean, schools were named after Confederates, streets. It was all this conglomeration of all these types of things. These things were set up to deter Black people from coming up here. And one of the worst things was that, two-family dwellings were against the law. You couldn't have two families. And that's how, because my mom, I guess they snuck it, but a lot of Black people would come up here. If you had an uncle or a brother or sister, they would, move in the house. And my mom and my grandparents and my mom's sisters, they came and stayed with my uncle, who was on Hall's Hill. I mean, a closet was a bedroom. And then, when my grandfather got on his feet and got a job, then he would go out and get his house. Somebody would come and stay with him for a little while. My Uncle Benny and his family stayed there, and they were, and it was, it was crowded, but it was good times too, because family was so important then. I mean, everybody was really depending on family during these periods. But these things became against the law until I just understand last year that Jim Crow law was finally lifted off of Arlington after all this time. So you can do that now, which we pretty much have to, because all the houses are $1 and $2 million. So I don't know how many people can afford it, but this is the way people survived, and they were being cut off. I was raised on Hall's Hill, and we had a segregation wall, and so during this time, late 20s, early 30s is when they built that wall. So there was a lot of little things that were going on, and people began to retaliate a little bit. Some people were afraid to really fight, but we had people that were leaders and sort of pushed it. And a lot of these leaders, I'm proud to say, came from Hall's Hill. Hall's Hill really was progressive. Hall's Hill was and let me move this if I have a picture of that too. Let's see where we go.
Yeah, while you're doing that, Liz, can you enlarge the slides? I see a slider at the bottom right. Yeah.
I can enlarge it. Oh, there we go. Somebody did it. Okay.
There we go. Yeah, much better.
Okay, so
Thanks.
yeah, I could just move it down a little bit. Okay, well, I had a picture of the wall. Let me see. And we were talking about. There it is. Okay, so that's the wall. That's the piece that's still there. Actually, it fell about 3 3 or 4 years ago. It was a big water flood storm, and most of that's fallen down now. But that's the wall that segregated us. Um, and I climbed that wall one time, and we just played with the kids. It was no big deal. But you couldn't, you weren't just surrounded by a wall. You couldn't see it because there were it was a lot of wooded area in front of this wall. But you knew it was there. You see this other picture down here. You see a picture of Basil Hill. He's right here, Basil. And so House Hill was a plantation owned by Basil, and lot of famous things happened out of that. One of his enslaved people killed his wife. Uh, she was real, I guess, a real sassy type of person. She would run away a lot, and to punish her, they sold one of her. His wife sold one of her kids, and in retaliation, she threw the woman into the fire, and that story was a nationwide story. It was all over it was all over the newspapers about that. After the proclamation was signed, he began also to sell property to Black people, and some of the early ones was with the Heisen family. I believe was one of the earlier ones. I don't know if you ever Sandra Green. She's a activist on Hall Hill, but it was her family. And another famous thing that happened was the lady that the slave that was murdered. Her kids stayed, and now they were supposed to get a stipend for working for him. And something happened, and he whipped one of them. Now that's against the law now, because these people are free now. You can't do that anymore legally. So they took him to court, and they won. So that's the first time that a Black person could win against somebody like this. So that's another famous thing that happened on Hall's Hill, and that was also a big story that came along. But Hall's Hill was not did not come from Freedmen's Village, as we say. It came from Basil Hill, but it was an area that like I say, I was raised there. It was like a village. We had everything that you would need. You see, we had businesses, which were on Lee Highway, which is now Langston Boulevard. The barbershops. This is Mr. Clark, who was the first Black fire chief in Arlington, and that's the fire department there, which is still there, but it's been remodeled now. It's gorgeous now. And then that's his sister, Mrs. Brown, Lillian Brown, and Langston School is called Langston Brown, named after her, because she started a lot of things where people could get free babysitting services while they went to work. And so she did a lot of little things there. Okay, I'm gonna move down. And then, okay, Green Valley is what we talked about. That was one of the first areas that Blacks moved to after Freedmen's Village. And there we had the pharmacy. There's Doc Muse. All these churches you see, Lomax and Mount Zion, they came out of Freedmen's Village. That's John, who was like, he was sort of like Miss Brown, was an activist in Green Valley, and just made sure people had different needs, food, jobs. He was that type of person. And I don't think John got paid for all the work that he did. He was just dedicated person. No longer with us. Doc Muse died 4 years ago, and that was the only, for a long time, that was the only lunch counter we could go to and sit. Let's see what's this on here. Let's see, hold on, I'm sorry. For some reason, I can't make it move anymore. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, and then Johnston Hill we talked about. Johnston Hill is very, very important. Johnston Hill, it really should have been called Johnston. There was a white man from the Johnston family who was they were very progressive white people, and they sold a lot of this land to Black people. And one of the first places there was this house here, which is called the Gray House. We talked about Selena Gray. Well, Selena Gray's son built that house, and the house is for sale again too. I wish we could afford it because that'd be a good place to have the museum. But that house is still there. Harry Gray was a slave up until he was 12, and after 12, he began to work for money. And by the time he was 20, he was a bricklayer, and then he became a government clerk. This house, he used his skills that he had learned in slavery to build this house. And the house basically, as I've been explaining to people, is a monument because it shows someone going from slavery to middle class. That was just unheard of. So he was the first one. And he had 4 kids in that house, wife, he had a housekeeper. 2 of the streets were named after him and his wife. They're no longer named. Those names have been changed over the years. I wish they would change them back. So that house is like really an artifact, and it's a monument. It stands high, and it represents someone going from slavery. That's the American dream, from that to that. And then these other houses were built for so I can get but the church there, and then you have the school, which was in Johnston Hill, which is Hoffman Boston. If I can get down a little bit, Hoffman Boston school, which was all Black school that went from 6th grade to 12. The school stopped becoming a high school, I think, in 64. And a lot of the teachers went to other schools in Arlington. Both my parents went to that school, and it's still there, but it's an elementary school now. Part of it has been kept, but most of it's been renovated, but the school is still there. And then the church there is Mount Olive Church, and Mount Olive came out of Freeman's Village. And what they did was they bought property by the Sheraton, which became a neighborhood known as Queen City. And we know Queen City was demolished by the government to make way for the Pentagon. And people are still, we have one last resident still living from Queen City. His name is William Vollen. He's going to actually do a speech today. After I finish this, we have a program at with the Arlington Circle Society. You guys want to come? It's going to be in Crystal City, and William Vollen, he's 93. Got all his faculties, and he was the last resident of Queen City. He's going to speak about what happened there. This is a busy day. Let's move down. Okay, then we talk about civil rights, and we can go down a little more. And so in 1960, Howard University kids came to protest so that we could sit at the lunch counters. For those who are too young to know about lunch counters, they were in the drugstores, and anybody could buy the food, but you had to be white to sit at the counter. And they had the best milkshake and the best fries. Oh my God. And it was cheap. because this is before McDonald's. McDonald's took over from all this, but you couldn't get food cheaper than you could get in a drugstore. So here you see on the top picture, Dion Diamond, who is taking a lot of flack from these people, but he's been trained, and the whole thing was nonviolence. So he's actually taking a lot of stuff. The gentleman in the suit is it was the head of the Nazi party. And right. And oh, his name escapes me right now. Somebody can tell me who this name is.
Lincoln
Lincoln
Rockwell.
Rockwell.
Rockwell. Yes, you guys are okay, good. You guys are helping me here. And what's so sad about this picture is that he influenced all these young kids. You see these young kids there, and these kids should be in school, and he's got them out there doing things like that. And there's a gentleman that lives in Cherrydale that went and found out that what happened to a lot of those kids. A lot of those kids ended up living hard lives, went to jail and the whole thing. But they were in awe of him. But that's the guy sitting down is a gentleman named Dion Diamond. He's still alive. And then the next picture you see Dion Diamond, Lawrence Henry, and in the middle that's Joan Mulholland, who we have to recognize people like that. Joan, I don't know what prompted her to do this, but she wanted to be a part of this. She was not asked to be a part. She went and volunteered. She went to Howard one day and said, "Look, I want to be a part of this." And of course, they told her what she had to do, and so she came out, and you see one of the Nazi guys behind them. They threw water on him and all things, and they tried to say that she was insane, and then somebody said it was going against her will. But we have to recognize our white anti-racist people, all leaders also, because for some odd reason, America or the powers that be keep these people's names under wraps. I mean, if I ask you to name me 3 or 4 anti-racist white leaders, how many can you name? Besides Lincoln, who can you name? And most people look dumbfounded, but there were many. And for some reason, we keep their names, hidden. I have, because a lot of people need somebody to look up to. Martin King and Malcolm X. I see these people, but a young white guy, who did you see? So I think that's the reason why. But there were many. There was Anne, I think her name was Anne Bancroft or whatever, and she was right there with on that when
Joan Baez.
huh?
Joan Baez, my
Oh,
love.
okay. Kumbaya. But there were many, and we have to recognize them. But the reason why I love this is because it's integrated. This is 1960. Had it been all black people protesting, it wouldn't have worked. It was all white, it wouldn't. But it shows that when we come together as one, you got power. And so this took a matter of days before, it was resolved. So this shows you the power when we come together. We move down a little bit. Okay, then we also should be proud about integration. We had the first integrated school in Arlington, which was Stratford Junior High. And so I can move down a little. Okay. and these are the first kids that went. Michael is still living, and Gloria is still living. The two in the middle are gone, but um, they thought that this was going to be a big whatever and a lot of fighting and whatever. Nothing happened. These kids just went to school and nothing happened. And after after they integrated the school, then the other schools down in Virginia began to do the same thing, because some of those schools closed down for two years. They would not go through with this, and the government kept pushing it, and they just would not do it.
Scott, I should let you know we're closing in on 11 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Let's go faster. I can do it in 3 minutes. Okay, so this is Miss Ham, who was a civil rights leader, and she sort of started that movement to get the kids integrated. This is her in front of Arlington Theater. Let's go down a little more. And here we go. Now, these are some of the leaders that I was talking about. I said Anne Bancroft. That's an actress. Anne Braden. I'm sorry. She was one. And Peter George. And so these people, they need to be celebrated as well. And it's more. This is just a few of them. And then where we are, can we keep going down? Is that it? No. Okay, so what we're doing now with the stumbling blocks, that's me and Tim and Jessica last year. And those are the first 3 that we did at the Barcella's house. And I'll stop here. So visit us when you can, and we can talk more.
And we had a question, if
Yes.
somebody wants to make a donation, where can they send it?
You can go to our website, which is arlingtonblackheritage.org.
Okay. And are you a 501c3 organization?
Yeah, we are, and I'm telling you, your candidates really almost got me in trouble. Everybody wanted me to represent a candidate. We can't do that, So yeah, we are.
I was just going to bring up Joan Mulholland still lives in Arlington.
Yeah.
And
Just
she's
talked to her
got a
yesterday.
CD called An Ordinary Hero.
Right.
Anybody that can get their hands on that should watch it.
And she's going to be at the celebration too today at 3 o'clock. Come down. It's at that park. Name of that park.
Is it the Jenny Dean Park or?
No. It is.
It's 2 o'clock.
Huh?
2 o'clock.
Yes.
What's the name of the park? Do you know? Steve?
Oh my gosh. I am. Let me get it right quick. Hold up.
Okay, I was going to make the comment that one of the reasons the white leaders were downplayed was because the tendency among the mainstream was to think that the whites would have been the organizers, because in those days they felt that Black people couldn't organize themselves. Also, there was the whole thing about communism. It was also thought that white communists were the leaders. So I think part of it was a sort of strategic decision.
Right.
And
But
it also was that the news would always focus on white people. And
okay.
I think a lot of people felt that the real organizers should get their dues rather than have the news always focusing on Joan Baez.
Right. But that makes sense. But you have to still talk about these people, and you have to still let people know. I mean, if there weren't these people, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. So you have to include them all. And it's time that we did. And I think when you include everybody, it brings people together. And when you bring people together, you got power. And we got to fight this Congress. So we need all the power we can get.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, and the park is Metropolitan Park, 1400 South East Street. And also that's where the tower for Queen City is there too. But Joan Mulholland will be there. I'll be there. Mr. Bolland, some officials will be there. Food trucks. Just come for about I wouldn't stay long because it's too hot. But come out there for maybe 15, 20 minutes and then go back home to your air condition. I have to be under a tent for 2 hours. I don't know. I drink plenty of water. I like inside events.
Okay, well, I think that we are just about finished here. It's 11:02, and so Scott, thank you so much.
Okay.
I
Okay.
did-
You have to shut me up because I'll keep going. I'm like that bunny. So
It's okay. No, you gave a lot of really good information, and I
Thank
did
you.
put into the chat the 2 episodes, one featuring Craig Seifix,
Mhm.
and also another person who was a real pioneer was Brenda Cox, and Brenda was also involved with desegregating a high school. And her story is also one of the stories of life that I featured on Aging Matters. So if you have a chance, those are really good. They're half-hour programs and they're kind of fun to watch. So be sure to check that out. And I just wanted to remind everybody that next week, we're going to be learning about the new outpatient pavilion over at Virginia Hospital Center. I'm sure if you've driven by the hospital, you'll see this huge building and all of the services that are there. So Kathy Turner, who is the Director of Health Promotion and Senior Health, and Robin Adams, who is Vice President of Business Development, will be joining us. So if you want to learn where you're going to be going to get that X-ray or whatever, that's a good place to learn about it is next week. So, and for those of you who won't be joining us, we will miss you. But I hope you have a good week, and please stay cool. It's going to be another hot one out there today. So, and thank you again, Scott, for honoring us and talking about Juneteenth. It was an excellent presentation.
I didn't talk about Juneteenth though, but next time.
Well, we're learning a lot about that today as well, but learning
Okay.
about Arlington's history and the Black community is certainly was worthwhile on this day. So thank you.
I'll say one thing about Juneteenth. Juneteenth was shows that we're not free until everybody is free. So they were the last one. So nobody is free until everybody is free. So that's
Well said.
okay.
Well said. Take care, everybody. Have a good week.
All right.
That was